The Corcoran Entertainment Show is brought to you by Podmatch, the ultimate platform designed to connect podcast hosts with prospective guests effortlessly. Are you a podcaster looking to elevate your show to new heights? Or perhaps you're a guest hoping to share your story with a broader audience. Whatever your podcasting goals are, we have the perfect solution for you. Podmatch simplifies the entire process of discovering guests for your show or finding podcasts to feature your expertise. Now imagine a platform where you can easily match with like-minded creators tailored specifically to your niche. With Podmatch, you can effortlessly network with influencers and thought leaders, all while staying true to your podcast vision. There are a multitude of ways that Podmatch can help you grow your brand. You can be part of a thriving community of podcasters and potential guests. Engage, collaborate, and grow together. If you're ready to experience these fantastic benefits for yourself, we invite you to join Podmatch today. Head over to www.joinpodmatch.com/Corcoran Entertainment and sign up right now for only $6 a month. That's right, you heard me right, $6 a month. Join the Podmatch family today and watch your podcast soar to new altitudes. Thank you for tuning into the Corcoran Entertainment Show, and happy podcasting. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Corcoran Entertainment Show. I'm your host, Frankie Corcoran, coming at you on a Thursday again. It's always fun to tack on these little bonus episodes, but can't keep me away. Can't keep me away from it. This is our last episode of March. I actually thought that next week was the last episode, but the year is just flying by. Definitely take the time, guys, to enjoy the week and all that good stuff. I'm super excited about our guest today. I definitely wanted to showcase this amazing interview. It's something that I don't think is appreciated enough in podcasting. It's definitely because podcasting, it's a lot. Some might say it's simple. They say, "What do you like? How hard can it be? You just turn on a microphone and talk." And there's a lot to it. There is a lot more to podcasting than just that. And this gentleman here has a school for that. The School of Podcasting, run by Dave Jackson. He's launched over 30 different podcasts with over 4 million downloads combined, and in 2018 he was inducted into the Podcasting Hall of Fame. Definitely be sure to check out his book, Profit from Your Podcast: Proven Strategies to Turn Listeners into a Livelihood. Go to schoolofpodcasting.com and check out what Dave does. It's if you want help in monetizing your podcast, grow your audience, or just getting your podcast just lifted off the ground. Dave can help you with that. And he definitely gives a lot of insight in this episode as well too. So hope you enjoy it. Leave us a nice little review. Go show David some support. And so without further ado, guys, just sit back, relax, and enjoy the podcast today. All right, hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Corcoran Entertainment Show. I'm your host, Frankie Corcoran, and today I am joined by a very accomplished man in the world of podcasting, and I'm not talking about Joe Rogan. I'm talking about a guy who has probably taught Joe Rogan a few things. He, of course, founded the School of Podcasting. He's done a little bit of everything in the world of podcasting, help people, pursue their passion in podcasting. His book, Profit from Your Podcast, which focuses a lot on monetization and pursuing this as a career or as a source of income. Dave Jackson. Dave, how's it going?
Frankie, doing great. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. This was something I was so intrigued from the moment that I first read about you. A School of Podcasting. Like, that's because it's funny when, to a certain extent, I always say to people who want to start a podcast, they're like, oh, it seems like it would be difficult and this, that. And I'm like, no, it's actually not as hard as you might think to start a podcast. I mean, like, obviously there is a lot to it in terms of production and editing, and then there's also journalism too, if you're interviewing guests and stuff like that. So what were kind of the things that surprised you? I mean, like, starting your school of podcasting, what were some of the things that kind of surprised you of like, wow, this is actually a lot more work than I had anticipated? Did you kind of expect it to evolve around to this level where podcasting went from just talking with your friends or talking by yourself or whatever to now it's like this is what some people make their living off of? So how have you kind of adjusted to the changes and all that?
Yeah, I mean, I started back in 2005, which was like, we chiseled our podcast out of, granite, but it was sad back then. And it was a lot harder because there weren't tools like media hosts. Like we were hosting your own stuff. I had to handwrite my own RSS feed. It was really, really painful. And then you'd finally get one, and then you'd ask somebody, like, "Hey, do you listen to podcasts?" And they go, "Do I need an iPod for that?" And you're like, "Oh, okay." Like fast forward now, but I remember once I got it going, the first thing that really blew me away was I did a podcast for musicians, and I got to interview a guy named Carmine Appice, who was the drummer for Ozzy and Rod Stewart back in the day. I got to interview the bass player from Quiet Riot, Rudy Sarzo, and just a bunch of Joe Lynn Turner. And like, if you grew up in the 80s, you know who these people were. And I was like, I can't believe I'm talking to these people, and they're really, really cool. So that was when I first went, wait a minute. Like at the time, it was me in my brother's basement. I'd just gone through bankruptcy and a divorce, and I was in my brother's basement, and I'm talking to, Rudy Sarzo about Quiet Riot and Randy Rhoads. And I was like, wait a minute, if I have a podcast, like if I just sent an email to Rudy and said, hey, can we get on the phone for 20 minutes? He'd be like, get out of here, kid, you bother me. But when I say I have a podcast and I can help promote your book, and then they'll talk to you. So that was the first thing I noticed. Fast forward to today, you mentioned Joe Rogan, and the beauty of Joe Rogan is he got paid. The bad news is everybody and their brother thinks I can just talk to my friends and people will give me money. And
Yeah.
that works for Joe Rogan because Joe Rogan has really famous friends. But even that, I was listening to his interview. Like, I think Joe could go from a look, who am I? The guy's making hundreds of millions of dollars. But I tuned into his Julian Lennon. So I'm a big Beatles fan, son of a Beatle. I want to hear this. At the 59-minute mark, he starts talking about his dad. Now, that's always kind of awkward because, on one hand, it's Julian Lennon, and we don't just want to talk about your dad because that's kind of disrespectful. But on the other hand, in the first 59 minutes, I learned that his mom remarried and had a pretty nice stepdad. He knew where to get spaghetti in Morocco. And I'm like, that's great. In the event I ever go to Morocco, no current plans to go to Morocco, but thanks for that, Julian. And that sometimes being the son of a Beatle, people don't think you have any talent and that you just rode your dad's coattails. And I'm like, okay, but it wasn't like, I'm not going to tell anybody later, oh man, I heard this podcast. I know where to get spaghetti in Morocco. But at the 59-minute mark, he says, my dad always said if anything ever happened to him, he would let me know that everything was okay through the symbol of a white feather. And at the 59-minute mark, I'm literally like this close to saying, okay, I've had enough of this. This is boring. He drops his white feather story, and you're like, wait, what? And that's what you tell people, but you just got to tell them, yeah, just it starts about the 1 hour mark. And I'm like, oh, who is editing the show? So that's the one thing that everybody just thinks I can do that. Well, I'm not sitting through 59 minutes of you and your friends talking about that time with the orange Gatorade. And every time somebody says orange Gatorade, you're going, because we don't know what the joke is. I'm out, but I'll sit through, celebrity. So they kind of have a little different level of, I can sit through it. Even one day it was Adam Sandler and Mark Maron. And no, I'm sorry, Tom Segura. Not that it really matters, and they were talking about, you remember when the Chuckle Hut, and then there was the laugh thing, and they're just talking about the good old days. And I'm like, why am I listening to this? I don't know any of these clubs. I don't know what they're talking about. And I'm like, why am I still listening to this? And I'm like, oh, because they're celebrities. And I was like, so they kind of get a little extra pass on being boring. But that was when I'm like, yeah, it's famous friends talking about the good old days. And on one hand, it's information I can't get anyplace else. But the question is, do I want that information? So yeah, it's especially if you want to monetize, you have to remember that this is going to be heard by other people. And it, yeah, like if I got on the phone with my best friend, we'd probably talk about guitars from the 80s and the fact that our one friend is sick. And I'm like, okay, but like, do you care about my friend that's sick? No, because you don't know him. And so you have to remember that yes, a podcast can be a conversation, but it's a conversation with the boring parts removed because there are going to be other people listening to this.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And even if you think nobody's going to, oh, it's fine. Like, I'm only going to get like three people listen to it kind of thing. Well, you never know. You book big people, like your views can skyrocket. You know what I mean? So it's like if you're putting yourself out there in any capacity, you should go in with the mindset of it doesn't matter if two people see it. Two people might see it right now, but then who knows, in like 5 years from now they'll go back and look at it. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those things, especially the internet, where stuff like that doesn't go away. Like you could go back at a podcast interview from like 5 years ago and hear what somebody said and go, oh my God, that person's a terrible person. Did you hear what he said 5, 10 years ago on this podcast? You're like, yeah, but that was like 10 years ago. And
Yeah.
why is that relevant now? You know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of, and that's how our social media, the social media landscape is crazy too. How do you see podcasting kind of fitting in with, of course we have TikTok, we got, just all kinds of insane social media platforms now. Has that caused a decline in podcasting? Has it helped it in any way? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the problem is everybody's using social media wrong. They are doing marketing on social media and then they do it poorly. So they'll go to insert whatever, Twitter, Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, whatever. And the big thing is episode 16 is out. Link. You're like, okay, well, number one, I don't know what episode 16 is about. So maybe if it was like, hey, do you like the Beatles? We talked about them in this episode. Link. Then I might click on that. But the other thing is, most of the time on social, now that might be something I click on, but so many times we're just looking to see what's going on. Is there anything on fire? Do we need to this and that? So we need to be more social on social to find out what people are talking about. And then I just did a deep dive on this that in terms of if you want people to click stuff, if you want people to share stuff, and I know it's from, forever ago, get yourself a newsletter. And I was amazed. I did this episode and I just put out a newsletter that just explained how movies, like I actually got a subscription where I can go to as many movies as I want for $20 a month. And the actual movie experience has been degraded because they just throw thousands of bad commercials at you. Like I'm there for the previews and it's just bad commercial after bad commercial. And I'm in there literally at times, I am the only person in the theater. And I'm like, there are things that make great content. It's the content and the delivery. And they have the delivery, right? The IMAX sound and the cool seat and the popcorn and everything else. But the content, every movie I've seen has not been one I run out of the theater going, you got to go watch this movie. In fact, I'm usually going, I could have waited to see this at home. And then the fact that I used to go early to watch the previews, and now I go there, and by the time 8 million commercials have gone by, and then they show me another 5 previews, I'm like, can we just get to the movie? I just want to get to the movie. So we should be social on social because a lot of people think, oh, I'll start a podcast, I'll promote it on social. And the different reports I found that people are much more open to being marketed to in a newsletter. Like when we read email, we're like, all right, they're probably going to try to pitch us something. Or the good news is we're one click away. We're on social. You've only got maybe a little bit, or depending on what you're on, to actually explain why people need to click on that. And to me, that's a great place. We should, like, I spend a lot of time in Reddit and Facebook groups and sometimes in Quora, and I'm just there to listen because the more I can see what my potential audience is talking about, I use that to then make content that when I say, hey, today we talked about newsletters and how they perform better than social media. If you know somebody else that's struggling with growing their podcast, could you do me a favor and share this episode with them? Because they're going to love you because they're getting this great content and I get to grow my audience. And so, yeah, sometimes social, it's just Gary Vaynerchuk had a book called Jab, Jab. I forget how many jabs there were. It might have been three: jab, 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 right hook. And his whole thing was we need to give, give, give before we ask. And it just seems like so many people just use social media for like episode 17's here, episode 18 is here. And you're like, oh, okay. So we should be a little more social on social. Gary Arndt does a show called Everything Everywhere Daily, and he gets 1 million downloads a month. That's amazing. Now he does a daily show, but that's still an amazing stat. And he basically writes a term paper every day and then reads it, puts out his episode. And he said, I can't do this and keep my sanity. And so he said, I'm just going to quit social media. And at the time, you're like, you can't quit social media. Your show will die. It did nothing to his numbers. He's like, so that was a good experiment. He's like, yeah, he goes, in terms of growing my audience, he goes, it did nothing. So, and I always tell people social media is a trickle. It'll bring you a trickle. And we want a little here and a little there and a little there, all these different sources. But, try to maybe just use social to be, social.
Yes. Use social to be social. That's the best way. And building a connection with the audience too, so that you're not a robot. You know what I mean? Like I this is kind of a mistake that I did in like my first like few episodes or so. It was treating the even like the podcast interviews too, of treating it too much like a question and answer, which I mean to a certain extent, yeah, that's what it is. You're interviewing someone, it's question and answer, but it's a matter of creating or like in making some sort of connection with the guest. So it's not just like, hi David, so what inspired you to do this? So okay, cool. So how do you it's that was a mistake that I did early on, and then it's something I learned where it's better to keep maintain like a friendly persona, something that people will love to see and people will love to tune into. And just don't ask like very generic questions. I mean, best part is it's podcasting. It's not like you're under any time constraints or anything like that. Do you think there's really many benefits? I mean, talking about the time constraints, whereas radio, if you're doing a radio interview, it's like, okay, we got like 10 minutes to do this. Podcasting, we can go on as long as we want. What's your take on I mean, we kind of talked about it a little bit with Joe Rogan, where it took 59 minutes to get to the real meat and potatoes of or like the nitty gritty of certain topics. So what are your thoughts on the whole time constraints thing with podcasts versus like radio?
Yeah, there's a great book called Beyond Powerful Radio by Valerie Geller, and I love this quote. She says, there is no such thing as too long, only too boring. And for me, that's kind of our mantra at the School of Podcasting: don't be boring. And so what I do is if I do an interview, because interviews are a lot of work, you have to research the guest. And then when I'm actually listening to the recording, I always listen to the question. And the first thing I listen for is, did they answer the question? Because there are people that get interviewed a lot and you're like, what's your favorite type of pizza? And they give you an answer, 330. And you're like, wait, they didn't answer the question, but they gave you an answer. So I will say, okay, that answer gives no value to my audience. So the question and the answer go away. Or if they go, well, when did you start using that tool? And they go, well, that's a good question. I haven't thought about this because I know for a while we were using Excel spreadsheets, and then for a while my assistant was doing it, and I think we tried something else probably about 3 years ago. Okay, the answer started at probably about 3 years ago. I don't need to hear about the assistant and the Excel spread. The question was, when did you start using this? The answer is about 3 years ago. And so if I cut out a minute of junk and 1,000 people listen to that episode, I just saved 1,000 minutes to the universe. And so it's really about knowing your audience and what they want. That's how you edit. People are like, how do you know what to edit out? I'm like, it's you're sitting in the chair with the scissors and you have to know your audience. Like they're sitting behind you going, yeah, I'm bored. Can you get that out of here? Oh, yeah, I can do that. Click, 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 click. Because if you just want it to flow and everything is like, oh man, I'm going to try this when I get home, you want your audience almost stopping to take notes. And so that's really to me, I did an episode once on interviews, and my normal episode is about 35, 45 minutes. This was an hour and 10 because I just did a brain dump. I had so many people asking about it. And I was like, I'm just going to, here's everything I know about interviews, being interviewed and doing interviews. And if you go into Apple and look at that, the listen percentage, like how far did they listen, is over 100% because people were going back and listening again. Whereas if you look at some, like I could look at an episode that's, 28 minutes and it's got, a 72% completion rate. So it's about keeping the stuff that your audience wants to hear. The old line, how long should this piece of string be? Well, it needs to be as long as it needs to be to do the job. And so for me, I just listen to it. I think about my audience. I listen to every question and every answer and go, does that bring value to so and so? And if it doesn't, it's gone. And so many people think the guests come back and they're like, wait a minute, what happened to question 7 where I talked about my car or what? Like, no, they don't come back. They were there. We don't need to come back and listen. If we come back, it's to listen to how we were introduced and what you said about me when I left. And that's just, it's a survey of one, but I talked to other people and like, why would I go back and listen? I was there. I know what I said. So don't get worried about cutting things out. I did one interview and this woman dropped such a nugget at 20 minutes in. And I was like, oh, that is so good. It's a bummer my audience has to wait 20 minutes to hear it. Oh, wait, no, they don't. Let's put that at the beginning, shall we? Let's
Yeah.
start off with something that really comes out and hits them in the face. So, yeah, I to me, it needs to be as long as it needs to be and not a minute more.
Yes, and then it's also finding the balance of we don't want it too far or too long because we don't want the audience to get burned out or maybe not burned out but just bored real quickly too. Like, okay, I came because I don't know, like let's say I don't know Harrison Ford was on promoting a new movie,
Right.
and you were tuning in to hear him talk about that movie. And you have to wait until like the hour and a half mark. Like, let's say it's a 3 hour podcast. You would wait an hour and a half for him to talk about that movie. And then they only talk about the movie for like 10 minutes. You're like, I just wasted an hour and a half listening to this podcast to hear Harrison Ford talk about this movie. Like I would say Indiana Jones. And he only talked about it for like 10 minutes. I'm like, that was just kind of a waste,
Waste of my time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Conan O'Brien needs a friend. He's a great interview, but he spends 10 minutes berating his staff. And I know that if I were to listen to that, I know people that actually listen for the first 10 minutes because they want to hear Conan make fun of his staff and they all and it's all.
I do that too. I love listening to that part. I listen to every episode of Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. That's always It's a great way. It builds up, a person, like a personality, and it shows who everyone is.
But then there are people like me that I'm going, I want to hear the interview with Ron Howard. So I actually have my Pocket Cast set up to start the Conan O'Brien show at the 9-minute mark. Because I'm like, I don't have time. I don't really care. Sana and the other guy, they're great. I know a lot of people like, oh, it's the best part of the show. And I'm like, yeah, but I tuned in to hear from Ron Howard. So for me, and that's why I love that app, it can start it wherever you want it to. But same thing, Mark Maron always starts off with some sort of rant at the beginning of his show. And at the beginning of it, I was like, here we go. I know the world's coming to an end, Mark. And he's always, but after a while of listening to it, that's like my favorite part of the show. In fact, there are times when I will listen to it. He'll have a guest I've never heard of. And he's like, here's my talk with, Shirley such and such. And I'll be like, okay, that's enough of that. And I'm done and on the next episode. So it's one of those things where you have to do the show that you want to do. And if you want to have chit chat at the beginning, that's fine. It's going to be hard to grow your audience because the audience doesn't know you yet, and I always say, maybe put the chit chat at the end. I know one show I listened to at the end, they're like, how was your week? And that's the very last thing you hear. Oh, I did this. My kid did this. I had to work on the garage door. So you get to know them. It's just not a great thing to start off with, but there is no absolute. I always love that when people say that. There are no absolutes. I go, you realize that's an absolute, right? But where you want to put the chit chat, if any, is always up to you. I'm more of a put it at the end, but you know.
This episode of the Corcoran Entertainment Show is brought to you by Black Box Prompter. Are you a musician tired of being tethered to your tablet or music stand? Do you long to connect with your audience on a deeper level, but find yourself constantly glancing down at your lyrics and chords? Then I highly recommend Black Box Prompter, the smart and stealthy lyrics and chords teleprompter designed to liberate musicians from the stage clutter. This innovative device is perfect for bands, hobbyists jamming out in the garage, touring pros rocking arenas, and even houses of worship looking to elevate their services. It discreetly displays your lyrics and chords, allowing you to maintain eye contact with your audience, adding an extra layer of authenticity and connection to your performance. Don't let distractions hold you back. Unleash your full potential and create a more powerful connection with your audience with Black Box Prompter. Click the link in our episode description and use the promo code Corcoran at checkout for 10% off your purchase. Black Box Prompter, the smart teleprompter built for musicians by musicians. No, definitely. I mean, I think chit chat's good at the start as long as it's kind of quick. Like you're not going on for about like 20 minutes and then, all right, well, we better get to the interview. It's like, okay, just because you have no time constraints doesn't mean, you think about your audience attention span. Or some podcasts will even put the timestamps in the description and go, okay, the interview starts here. Like that's pretty good too. But it's, I guess it really depends on what podcast you listen to, which ones you like and which ones you're willing to sit and wait, as opposed to some other ones where you're just like, oh my God, these guys have been talking for like 10 minutes. Where's the guest? Like where's Harrison Ford? Where's Ron Howard? Like you said. But there's lots of things like that as podcasters sometimes we don't really think about as well too, but it's really, really good to always bear in mind. And one thing that's big too, I mean, and like we said, your book kind of covers this, the whole monetization with podcasts. And so I think the big, like that's one of the big draws for some people saying, I want to do this for a living. I want to do this. Right. And I'm gonna, it's like, okay, I have no doubt you could. I mean, but you don't just start off episode 1, boom, you got 1 million downloads and, here's all this ad money. It's like, no, that's not going to come to you in episode 1. So feel free to kind of delve into the real technical nuts and bolts of the monetization for podcasting.
Sure. I always say you don't monetize a podcast, you monetize an audience. And so step 1 is get an audience. And, we're talking about Joe Rogan. Step 1 of the Joe Rogan show is be Joe Rogan. And there's a guy that by the time he started his podcast, had been on 2 or 3 TV stations or TV shows. He'd had a record deal to do comedy albums. He had been entertaining people for over a decade and then got behind the mic. So, step 1 of that is be Joe Rogan, be Conan O'Brien. You're starting from a different spot. And then it sounds so simple, but it's not. And that is, who is your audience? And it can't be everybody, because even if I said it's for men 25 to 50, there's a big difference between a 25-year-old dude and a 50-year-old dude. And if you miss more than hit, I mean, I know when I read a book, if I'm on chapter 3 and I haven't got a golden nugget yet, I'm like, I think I'm out. Like I keep going through and this just doesn't fit for me, so if every 3 episodes, you're just like, well, that's 40 minutes of my life I can't get back, you're going to finally just swipe left and go leave, because there's no spam in podcasting. If I don't want your show, swipe left, delete, nothing you can do about that. And so everybody says, I'm going to start a podcast and I'm going to get ads. And so Libsyn, where I used to work, it was less than 10% of podcasts get enough downloads to get a quote big sponsor, the Mattress People, BetterHelp, food delivery, whatever it is. So let's flip that around into reality. 90% of podcasters are not going to get enough downloads to get a big sponsor. Now, does that mean you can't get a sponsor? No, you can. I get nowhere near the 10,000, 20,000 downloads you need, but I've had sponsors on the School of Podcasting. I quit using them because I can make more money promoting my own stuff. So I promote my membership, I promote my account, consulting, things like that. And even I did affiliate marketing for a weight loss show, and I ended up making $50 per 1,000 downloads. Now, the fun radio phrase for that is CPM. It stands for cost per mille, which I think is Italian or something. But anyway, I was making $50 CPM. A normal, quote, normal CPM, if you're a big show, is around 20. And you're like, okay, so if you got 10,000 downloads and you made $200, you're like, okay. But are you going to live on $200 an episode? And that's where you'll see now when CPMs are going down. Nobody wants to talk about that. CPMs are going down. Why? Because everybody now has spots for advertising. Well, supply and demand says if there's, more supply and not enough demand, right? The price goes down because you're trying to get anybody. And so people are like, hey, I'm using Captivate now. I can do dynamic stuff. I'm using Buzzsprout. And they're like, okay, well, I want $30 for 1,000 downloads on my show. And they're like, yeah, we're not paying that. And you're like, okay, but they'll go to somebody else. And that eventually they'll say, we're going to pay you 15. And eventually somebody's going to take that. And so the price is just going down, which is why you'll notice people that have sponsorships are putting more ads in because they're getting a pay cut. So I'm not anti-advertising. I'm just like, sell it per episode, not per download, because that's a mathematical nightmare. And then think about, there's more than just your show. It's like, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Sponsor, we're running a special right now. To be mentioned in the podcast, it's X amount of money. To be mentioned on the website, it's X amount of money. To be mentioned on social, it's X amount of money. And to be mentioned in our newsletter, it's X amount of money. It's a 3-month commitment. And right now we're running a special. It's X amount of money. And go that route versus it's X amount per download or things like that. So they're selling your own stuff, selling other people's stuff. That's affiliates. Selling sponsor, and then there are programmatic ads, which I refer to as the welfare of podcasting, where you're making maybe $3 per 1,000 downloads. So when your audience sits through 30 seconds of an ad that doesn't even come close to being relevant, you make 0.003 cents. Now, you do you, but for me, I'm not doing that. So there's programmatic ads, but then there are people doing crowdfunding. And this could be Patreon. I'm a little more partial to Supercast, that are making $30,000 a month because they're delivering content you can't get anyplace else in a fun and entertaining fashion. And they ask. And so many people just like put up a PayPal button and go, there you go. And they mention it once. There's a PayPal button on the website. No, you got to treat that like a sponsor and explain how they're going to benefit. And it has to be really, really good. And so it's just one of those things where it just takes time, and nobody likes this stat. And I hear it over and over and over. There are two, and they're both 3. One is around 3% of your audience will do crowdfunding or take some sort of action. And when I talked to the people at Teachable, they said 2%. And when I talked to the guy behind NPR Plus, he said 1%. So when you go, man, if I could get 100 people and have 50% of those people give me $20, that's $1,000. It's going to be, no, you're not getting 50%. You're not getting 20%. You're not getting 10. If you're a demigod, you might get 5, but it's probably 3%. And then the other thing is, how long does it take before I can get sponsors? Well, that depends again on your niche. But when I asked that question to the people in my book, the answer that came back was around 3 years. And you're like, wait, but I want to start a podcast and quit my day job in about 6 months. Probably not going to happen.
No.
So it's tricky, and it takes a lot of time and dedication. And you also have to kind of, learn a little sales skills, a little marketing and things like that. So I always say, enjoy the process of creating the podcast. Enjoy the art of being creative and the fact that you can do whatever you want with your show and have fun, because the people that were really like making some bank did it because they just wanted to talk about their stuff. Darren Dake is a former member of the School of Podcasting. He does the Coroner Talk. He was a coroner and wanted to talk to other coroners. And so he started the show and started talking to other coroners. And then somebody said, hey, will you come speak at my event? And he did. And then he got asked to speak there. And then he got a job. Somebody hired him to be like the head coroner of, I forget what state. and then that led to something else. And then he found out that to be a corner, you have to basically be retested every so many years. And some states don't have a place. Welcome to the government. Some places don't have a place to be retested. So you have to go to another place. And he was like, well, wait a minute. So he created a school to where you could get reassessed and, recertified. And the beautiful thing was he got it finished and was doing great with it. And then he said, you know what? I'm going to make an online version. And he finished it right before 2020. And so that's when the roof that you talked about timing. And now everybody needs to be recertified, except we can't go anywhere because we're under a lockdown because of COVID. Oh, wait a minute. I can get recertified online by this guy's course. And he's making so much money, he won't tell me how much he makes anymore. So he's making a fair amount. But he started off because he just wanted to talk to other coroners.
It's like the you don't choose fame chooses you, or you don't choose success chooses you. Like it's one of those types of situations where put your name out there. You want to be a musician, you want to do that full time. Okay, great, but start somewhere. Book gigs, even the smallest of gigs. Like if you start playing at like benefits or like fundraisers or stuff like that, that's one extra person who will see what you're doing. And if they know people in another city who are like, we're looking for some people to perform at this concert, oh well, I know so and so. And then so it's all kind of it all lines up, like it's all, everybody spots each other in different ways. And same with podcasting, really.
Yeah, I had that exact scenario. I played in a band. I'm a musician, I'm a guitar player. And one time we played this kind of ranky old club. There were 3 people at a table and 4 people working. There were 7 people on stage. So it was 50-50. We had 7 people, but that one guy hired us to play his birthday party, which paid much more than this bar did. And at the birthday party, he bought us out of every ounce of merch that we had. So it was one of the most profitable gigs that we ever had, because even though we kind of looked at each other like, well, this stinks. We're playing to, 3 people. And we'd even ask him like, hey, anything you want to hear? Like, we don't really care. But we played like we were playing Madison Square Garden. Like we gave it our all. And I think that's what impressed the guy. So you never know who's listening. It's always kind of weird. I was at an event once, and there's a author I love, Michael Hyatt. He's really into organized and your best year ever and kind of thing. And he was speaking, and at the end they were like, do you have any questions? And I said, hey, I'm Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting. And I asked him my question. He's like, oh, hey, Dave, I listened to your show. And I was like, wait, what? Michael Hyatt listens to my show? I can't believe it. But you hit the nail on the head. Hey, can I make a living as a podcaster? I don't know. Can you make a living as an actor or a musician or an athlete or whatever? It takes a lot of time and dedication, and there's really no guarantee, because there are a lot of really talented bartenders in Nashville that moved from nowhere, Wisconsin. They're like, I'm going to go to, like, they're a big deal in nowhere, Wisconsin. And they move to Nashville and they find out, oh, there are other people here. I got a whole other, competition here. And so they're a bartender and they're still putting in their chops, trying to be found. But, when you like, oh, I'm going to be a YouTuber, I'm like, okay, well, there's just a little bit of competition over there. And so,
I'm going to beat Mr. Beast. I'm going to be bigger than Mr. Beast. It's like, okay, dream big, buddy,
Exactly. But if you're having fun while you're doing it, then, a lot of times you don't really care. You're like, I had a friend that I helped, and he said, all right, I got to start a podcast. And I go, why? He goes, because my family doesn't want to talk about Batman. They've heard so much about Batman. And he goes, look, I know there are 5,000 shows out there about Batman. He goes, I just want to talk about Batman. I'm like, hey, we can make this happen. We'll start your show, and you will attract other people that just want to talk about Batman. And so we launched the show like 3 episodes in. He's getting feedback and stuff. And we really helped him promote it. And I said, you realize you have a completely successful show? And he goes, what? And I go, you wanted to talk about Batman. Because we always used to call it Batman in the basement. And he goes, yeah. And I go, you're talking about Batman in the basement with other people. I go, that's what you wanted. That was your why. And I go, you are now getting your why. Hence, you're a successful podcast. So it really does depend on, why am I doing this?
Yeah, and don't lose sight of that at the end of the day, and That's also one thing too, where once the success comes, I'm sure it feels overwhelming a lot too. Have you ever dealt with people who they dream of doing this and doing that, and then once it finally arrives, they kind of go like, oh God, I didn't think it was gonna be like this. Like how do you kind of coach those people through that?
Well, it's weird because half the stuff I coach isn't the technology, or it's getting people over their own mental hurdles. Because first, it's nobody will listen to me, right? Imposter syndrome. Why would anybody? I'm nothing special, and so they'll start, and sure enough, nobody's listening to them. They're getting 13 downloads an episode, maybe up to 30, and then all of a sudden, because they're getting a little more confident behind the microphone, and they're kind of figuring out what's working and what's not, and then all of a sudden it'll start to take off a little bit. And now they've gone from 30 downloads to 300. And I go, that's a small theater. They're like, what? I go, that's a small theater. A number of people have filled a theater to come listen to you on a weekly basis. I said, so remember, that's a stage. You don't want to just wing it on stage. Be prepared every week and do that. And then 3 leads to 400 and 500 and this and that. And all of a sudden, they've gone from nobody will listen to me to, oh crap, what do I do? People are listening to me. And that's a whole other hurdle where you have to go, yeah, because you know what you're talking about, or you're doing this or that. So it can kind of, it's both sides of the story, because you're convinced nobody's going to listen. And then people start to listen. And then when they do, it's another problem. You're like, well, wait a minute. This microphone has power. Like, what do I do now? And I'm like, well, just keep doing what you're doing. Be yourself. Go talk to those people that are there. People always go, well, how do I know like what they want? And here's a novel idea. You're in podcasting, you're in communication. Ask them. Put up a survey and ask them, and you'll find out that, hey, that lightning round thing, yeah, they hate that. Maybe you should cut that out. But this other thing you do, they love that. Maybe you should do more of that. And I'm not sure why, unless it's just artists, right? It's my art, man. This is what I do. It's my art. And they really don't want feedback because I worked so hard on this. But in the end, if you go to a restaurant and they forgot to put salt in the bread and the people bite into it and they're like, ugh, and you're like, wait, hold, let me, oh, yeah, and they go fix it and bring you new stuff. And now these people love your restaurant because it's always exactly what they're looking for. So, yeah, it can be tough. And the biggest thing, I had a guy that he was in the Air Force, flew in Afghanistan. He was the guy that would be flying the plane that you would then come up and dock into to refuel. So he flew in like wartime situations. So obviously a very brave man. He had written a couple of books, so he knew how to make content, was a keynote speaker. And I'm like, great, this is going to be a great podcast. And I could not get him to record anything. And I said, okay, like we got on Zoom and I'm like, what's the deal here? Because you're brave, you got content. What's the deal? And I go, do you think it's your military that's kind of clogging up the pipe here? And he goes, probably. He goes, I'm afraid I'm going to look stupid. And I go, totally normal fear. I go, tell you what, go record, because we'd be talking and I'd be like, dude, that was episode 1. Why weren't you recording that? I said, go record episode 1. Well, he had scripted it. And it sounded very much like he was reading a script. And I said, there is a problem when you record like this. Nobody wants to listen to someone read to them.
Sounds like Chat GPT.
Yeah. And I said, so try to add, I said, you don't have to be Pukey radio guy, but add a little energy there. And so he came back and I listened to it and I go, man, that's so much better. I go, you could probably put that out. And he goes, well, you said probably. I'm like, well, I said, I'm listening through the ears of a podcaster. I can still kind of barely tell you're reading. I go, but I kind of know you're reading. He's like, hold on. So he goes back next day, sends me version 3 of this. I go, dude, I cannot tell you're reading this at all. And he goes, I'm not. He goes, I know the story now. He goes, and maybe that's my process. And so it's Tales from the Cockpit. And he did it because his business, you can send him a picture of your plane and he'll make this big, giant magnet foam thing that sticks on the wall of your plane. And so he's getting business from that. But the biggest thing that he got out of it is when you're in the military, or if you're a pilot, or if you're whatever, if you're adopted, or if you're whatever your group is, when you get to talk to other people that know exactly what it's like to be you, that's something you can't get every place. So he's like, a lot of his guests, he goes, they don't really talk about, and if they had to do any kind of wartime stuff, he goes, they don't talk about it. He goes, but they'll talk about it to me. So we're getting all these stories and insights and things like that. And he's having a blast. I'm like, yeah, but what about the business? He's like, oh, that's going good too. He goes, but for him, he's retired and he kind of misses hanging out with the boys and talking about that time when you had to fill out the K77XY, format thing and they have all this jargon that nobody knows what they're talking about. But if you're in the military, you do. And so that's the beauty of it. But I really had to be that dad in the pool, and the kids got their water wings on and the dad's in the pool going, jump, I will catch you. You'll be okay. Jump, jump. And you can't get the kid to jump. And so when he finally did, I was like, dude, this is amazing. And he's been doing great things ever since.
That's awesome. And as scary as it is, much like anything, it's like being scared of heights. You're scared of heights, but once you do it, maybe you're terrified of heights, but then someone asks you to go skydiving, you're terrified, and then you do it and you're like, okay, that wasn't as bad as I thought. Like I feel powerful in a way, not confident. That's the one thing too. It's remaining confident, but not cocky, finding that balance there. How important too is consistency in podcasting? Because for me, I think it's critical, because that's where a lot of it goes wrong for people, where they go like, yeah, I'm doing a podcast, I want to do this, and they do 2 episodes and then it just kind of fizzles out and they just forget about it and pretend it never existed. So how critical is it to be consistent?
Yeah, consistency is important. And what those people did that did 2 episodes and quit is, I always tell people, record a couple episodes and then pick your schedule, because so many people go, I'm going to do a daily show. And in my head, I'm thinking, no, you're not, because that will burn just about anybody out.
Yeah.
But always record a couple and then look at your schedule and say, okay, that took 10 hours to do that show. Do you have 10 hours a week? And they go, no. And I go, okay, we have 2 options. Either make the show shorter or you're not doing a weekly show. Which one do you want? But so many people think if I'm just consistent, like in my book, I say, it takes about 3 years to grow your audience. And so they'll come to me and they're like, hey, I've been doing it 3 years. I'm ready to monetize. I'm like, how many downloads you're getting? They're like, I don't know, 105. And I'm like, per episode? And they're like, yeah. And I go, that's going to be hard to monetize. I'm like, well, I've been doing it 3 years. And I'm like, it's not just the schedule. If it was, I've been playing the guitar since I was, 14. I don't have any Grammys. It's not because I kept playing. It's, you got to have it good. And also for me, if I hit play on a show, it's a new show, I've never heard of it, and I hit play, and my first impression is like, hey, welcome to the show. It's Thursday, and I'm not really sure what I'm going to talk about, but I promised you a show every Thursday. I hit stop immediately, because that person's going to waste about 40 minutes of my time. So it's not just being consistent. I would rather have a really good episode that was late than an on-time show that was meh. So it's not just being consistent in schedule, because that is huge. You will become part of their routine. I've had people like, you're with me every Monday on the way to the feed store, Dave. Or I remember one person, I shower with you every Monday, Dave. And I'm like, that's a little weird to say, but okay. I mean, I'm the same way. This is how I party. You ready? This is how on Friday nights, I go grocery shopping at Walmart. That's it. But every Friday, I listen to a show called Podcasting 2.0. And it's Adam Curry and Dave Jones, and they're talking about super nerdy podcasting stuff. But they release on Friday, and it just so happens that's the day I'm going to Walmart, mainly because nobody's in there. They're all out doing fun stuff. And I'm like, oh, cool, I'll go grocery shop. And so that's part of my Friday routine. And when they take a week off, which isn't very frequently, but I think Adam went on his wedding anniversary or something important, and he wasn't there. So they didn't do a show. And it was weird, because I was like, all right, I got to listen to something else to listen to. And the whole thing is, if I had found a show that I like better than Podcasting 2.0, when they came back, they've got your slot now. Now you've got to win it back. And so I'm not a big fan of seasons and taking time off. And now look, if it's affecting your mental health and you're losing okay, that's a whole other story. But anytime I can, like I'm going to Podcast Movement Evolutions at the end of this month. And somewhere between now and then, I'll record 2 episodes, not just 1, because that one will be scheduled to go out instead of going, well, no episode this week. because it's not like they're going, well, I listened to Dave. It's Monday, but Dave's not here, so I guess I'll just sit in the car and do nothing on the way to work. No, they're going to find something else to listen to. And I don't want to give somebody else a chance to take my spot. So I am there every Monday and I work hard on being consistent. And I have an episode right now I've been working on for almost a month about running your podcast as a business. And it's because I decided I'm going to go through everything that I'm advising people to do. So I can kind of give that crash test dummy and say, hey, I was going to work with this company because, boy, they look at all the features. Oh, except their customer service is horrible. It's ridiculous how bad it is. So, but I normally don't work 5 weeks on an episode, but I've just been going through the steps and taking notes. So, yeah, consistency is important. Consistency and quality to me is more important.
Exactly, because you don't want to, as you said, well, I don't really have much to talk about today but I promised a weekly episode, so I'm just gonna ramble all by myself, kind of thing. Like very few can do that, for as their whole podcast. Like it's one of those things where it's good to have, like, okay, I can't get a guest, blah, 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 or like nobody's around. And that was something that I used to do as well too. If I couldn't get a guest, I'm like, okay, it's weekly. I would just go on about stuff. But you also want to put out good stuff too. Quality over quantity is a huge thing.
Yeah.
I always emphasize as well. And even also, talking about like quality and all that stuff. Burnout's real. Burnout is 100% real, and that's something that people think, oh, I love doing this, I'm not going to get burned out. It's like, well, no. You could love sports, you could love basketball, you could love playing basketball, but there's going to be times where you just did a big tournament and you're tired and you just want to. Does that mean you hate basketball? No, it's just you're tired, you need to rest.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that a lot of people will think as soon as it comes to burnout. Have you dealt with people who are like that and think that just because this is what they love, that it's all going to work out and that they're going to be able to keep it up with the consistency?
Yeah, it's what you run into is like I've done that. I've started probably 30 different shows over 20 years. I remember one of my backgrounds was customer service. And so I started off with delusions of grandeur. I'm like, hey, I'm going to start this show. It's called the Customer Service Show. Creative, but at least I had my keywords in there. And I did about 6 or 7 episodes, and I just sounded like a grumpy old man. I was just like, well, I went into this place and they didn't even complain. And then I explain. And in the end, it dawned on me, I'm like, this is my job, but it's not my passion. This isn't something I would talk about for free. And so that's gone. Sometimes my very first show was for musicians, and I did that for 10 years. And after a while, I was like, I think I've said all there is to say. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you're not in the music business, you're in the beer selling business if you're playing bars. Pay your bar tab, be kind to your, waitresses and waiters, and, peace out. I'll see you later. Because after 10 years, you're just like, yeah. And not, it's usually you've changed. Like at that point, I wasn't in a band anymore. So I'd kind of lost my source of information, but I had found other things that I was into. So for a while, I did a weight loss show because I was trying to lose weight, and I would lose it. And then it turns out it was right there. I didn't really lose it. I found it pretty quick, but I've started a bunch of different shows, and yeah, there just comes a time. I know, one of my clients is doing a show. I think it's Studying the Old Testament with My Mom is the name of the show, because oddly enough, it's about studying the Old Testament with her mom. And I think her mom's not into it anymore. So she lost her source of material. Zeta Christian is one of my favorite people. She's 70 something, and she did a show called My Spouse Has Dementia. Why? Because she said nobody's talking about dementia in a realistic way. She goes, nobody's talking about adult diapers, and nobody's talking about lack of self-control. And she's like, I want to talk. She goes, you watch TV and it's like, oh, I can't find my keys. Oh, do I have dementia? She's like, no, let's really talk about it. And so she did this really great show and explained what it was like with her husband. And then her husband passed away. And she's like, well, and I said, well, now you can talk about grief. You can talk about moving on and this and that. And she still does episodes, not as consistent as she used to because she lost her stuff. She goes, well, what's interesting, she goes, the show lives on. She goes, I still get people emailing me going, I'm so glad you made this show. And so there are times that, it's not, a lot of people get offended by the word pod fade. You're like, oh, you pod faded. I'm like, yeah, so did Cheers, so did Jerry Seinfeld, so did Game of Thrones. Like everything comes to an end. And if you're not enjoying it anymore, then, oh, God, man, life is too short to do stuff you don't like doing. Find a different passion and start a different show and then tell your audience about it. Because there are a lot of people, like I had people that were musicians listening to my musician show that came over to the School of Podcasting. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know you had a podcast. They're like, oh, I don't. I used to listen to your other show. I think you're funny. And I'm like, what? Okay. And then eventually they're like, well, I got a microphone here. I might as well start a podcast. And likewise, I had podcasters that would listen to the music show. Why? Oh, you seem to be kind of entertaining. I like your stories. So they come for the content, but they stay for the host.
That's good. Like that's all part of building a connection, building your online persona, so you're not just like a chat GPT robot, like just, hello, welcome. My name is welcome to the show. Like you seem like the type of guy who people will want to hang out with in public. It's not like it's a robot. It's a real person. And depending on what the podcast is and if that person shares similar interest to you, it's like, hey, this literally feels like a conversation I would have with one of my buddies. So that's why it's super important to maintain that and be upbeat and be interactive with people, and it really makes all the difference. It really, really does. And it's great that you're doing such incredible things with the School of Podcasting. So, we could go on and on just about this stuff because I just think it's so fantastic. But what could you kind of tell us, as like a call to action, so to speak, for the School of Podcasting, how you can be involved and all that stuff?
Yeah, if you go over to schoolofpodcasting.com, you'll see my page there that explains kind of a little bit about who I am. And at the bottom, there's a number of ways you can work with me. Some people just hire me to listen to their show and give them pointers on, hey, it took you 7 minutes to get to the guest and you read me their LinkedIn bio and I fell asleep. So there's that. I've got the School of Podcasting, which has courses. It has an amazing podcasting community. And then the other thing with that is you get unlimited consulting with me. Like this morning, I use an app, especially for people that are overseas. And I probably had 3 or 4 conversations on an app because we basically can text each other, send audio, video, and screen shares. So I always tell people, because that was one of the things. They're like, man, I would love to do this. I'm all by myself. And I'm like, no, you're not. I'm right here with you. So we've got the School of Podcasting as well. And you can find it all over there at schoolofpodcasting.com. Comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. And use the coupon code LISTENER, and that'll save you on either a monthly or yearly subscription.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's a perfect. It sounded like a sponsorship ad or something like that. We are not sponsored.
Join the School of Podcast. Yeah.
Corporate Entertainment Show is brought to you by School of Podcasting. Here is Dave Jackson for more. Yeah, so fantastic, Dave. Fantastic what you're doing, and I'm glad that there is mentorship for people who want to get into podcasting, because it's not as simple as people say, I'm just going to start a podcast and it's going to get blah, blah, blah. There's a whole process to it. So we have people like you who can teach people, coach people through their journey and stuff, and it's really, really great to see. Congratulations on all of your success, and hope all goes well with this. School of Podcasting has been going very, very well. Hope it continues to soar to new altitudes. And also congratulations in 2018. I know you were inducted into the Podcasting Hall of Fame. I forgot to bring that up, so I meant to say that's awesome.
Yeah, thanks so much. That actually we talked about getting over your head kind of stuff. And when I came back after winning that, accolade, it took me a second to do the next episode, because every time I hit record, I'm like, is this Hall of Fame worthy? Is this, oh no, this can't be, no, that's not good. It has to be better. And finally I just said, wait a minute. I got into the Hall of Fame by being myself. So I just need to be myself. And that's what people want. And so, but it took me, it really messed with my brain for quite a bit. That, and you don't get any discounts at the grocery store. You can walk in with your trophy. Look, I'm in the Hall of. They don't care. So
just walk around like
yeah.
you get pulled over, the cop license and registration, please. Okay, you hold up your award. Okay, keep going. You know, like that doesn't mean anything.
None of that. No
Think of all the
groupies.
celebrities who have gotten pulled over and stuff like that, and they still get fined. You know what I mean?
That's it. Yeah.
It's just a shiny hunk of metal or a certificate or whatever it is that people get. You know, that's all there is. But yeah, David, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Guys, thank you for listening to the show on a Thursday. We will see you guys next week on Tuesday. But until then, this is Frankie and Dave Jackson signing off. Cheers, Dave.
Thank you. Take care.